Hey everyone, it's Joe Crawl with the Society of St. Sebastian, and again, welcome to this week's edition of Pro-Life University. This week we're going to talk about the Choose Life license plate bills, and I just want to say that this is a very prominent and a very successful pro-life piece of legislation. It is passed in 33 states. That's over half of the states in our country. And so basically what that means is 33 states out there have specialty license plates with people driving around basically with a big pro-life message on there that says choose life. They are wonderful. It's a wonderful pro-life message. I mean, you can even notice I got my little choose life tie on today celebrating it. I know a lot of pro-life leaders have Choose Life license plates. I certainly have one. They're wonderful things, and these bills do so much. A lot of people don't really realize it. They're so much more than just a mere specialty plate, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. We're going to talk a little bit more. As popular as they are, they go beyond just this mere specialty plate. And a lot of people may ask, well, hey, Joe, I don't quite understand how just a mere specialty plate, it just seems so, innocuous. It doesn't seem like it would have much of an impact. But these bills really do. And for me, it kind of drove a particular point home when I saw a particular story this week on the internet. And it kind of touched back on an article that I wrote about 10 years ago. I mean, it was really strange, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later in this video as well. But one of the things I definitely want to start off with is the notion of choose life itself. Some people certainly know this in the pro-life movement. Some people may not know this within the pro-life movement. But the name itself, choose life, actually comes from Scripture. And in particular, it comes from the book of Deuteronomy. And in particular, it's chapter 30, and you can find it in verses 19 and 20. All right, let me just read it for you real quick. I got my Bible right here real quick. And in particular, it says, I call heaven and earth today to witness against you. I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Choose life, then, that you and your descendants may live by loving the Lord your God, heeding his voice, and holding fast to him. All right. Now, one of the beautiful things here to really talk about when it comes to this particular thing is how the author equates life with a blessing. In fact, in the next sentence, it talks about how, this blessing, by living the Lord's blessing, if you will, and following the Lord's will, if you will, can lead to a long life. We got to understand, in ancient Old Testament Jewish times, the ancient Jews did not have any developed sense of an afterlife. That began to develop during the time of Jesus, just before the time of Jesus, and certainly during the time of Jesus. And obviously, Jesus had a very full sense of a development of an afterlife and so forth. But these ancient Jews did not have a sense of the afterlife. So a long life, right, was seen as a blessing, especially if you lived in harmony with God. So choosing life was living in accordance with God. Death, if you recall, just from a theological perspective, was seen, I guess you could say, with respect to sins. Death is in accordance with sin. And again, that goes back to the fall of man, as we see in Genesis chapter 3. Sin is associated with death. That, when Adam and Eve eat the fruit, the consequence becomes that they become mortal, right? That they're no longer going to have immortal lives, but they're going to have mortal lives. And so death is a consequence of sin. And so choosing life then is a blessing. All right, so life is a blessing. So choosing life is a blessing. All right, and so this is really what the message of what this one little license plate is ultimately saying, that life itself is a wonderful blessing of the Lord, that the Lord is giving you this wonderful blessing, and that you should choose life. Right? So that's really kind of the wonderful sort of consequence that we see with respect to this. Right? Now, let me talk a little bit about the legislation itself. Right? Now, first thing to note, now, like with each state, there are particular nuances that each particular state has with their own particular Choose Life license plate bills. But the basic gist of each bill is that the specialty plate, a certain amount will be taken. Each specialty plate costs a certain amount. First of all, it's not like you pay a set amount for or a normal license plate, but you do pay a particular amount for a specialty plate. Well, for the Choose Life license plate, you pay that amount, and a particular portion of that amount is set aside, and then those monies are handled by somebody, right? And that particular group or organization, whether that's a state, run by a particular organization within the state, or now even Choose Life Incorporated, the folks that began this whole Choose Life license plate initiative, they're also running some state programs. They're also, trying to figure out, where to put the money for these states as well. So some states, it goes to adoption agencies. Again, this idea of choosing life as a blessing, right? Choosing the life to give your child up for adoption. Right. Some also give to crisis pregnancy centers. Sometimes it's a little mix of the two, but nonetheless, that's what these specialty plates do. All right. So they're raising money for various areas within the pro-life movement with respect to women choosing life. Right. Because life is a blessing. Right? Now, I want you just to imagine just here with me for a few minutes. And I want to take you back. All right, when I first began writing on pro-life legislation, one of the first things that I did when I started writing, and I started writing on various pro-life bills, one of the first things I wrote about was Choose Life license plate, and I basically argued, why do pro-lifers need to, basically set down the money and get these specialty plates? And long story short, the whole idea is that even in the middle of a traffic jam, if you can imagine, the person that is right behind you, that is sitting right behind you in traffic, sees this, it might just plant a seed, that bare minimum seed of thought within that mind. It may get that person to thinking about something, about choosing life. What does this mean? And so forth, right? And I think that's an important sort of thing here, right? It may not necessarily change a person's mind right then and there, right? Or the person that is pro-life that's sitting behind him, it certainly won't change their mind right then and there at all because they're already pro-life. But let's just say the person that's right behind that car that has the Choose Life license plate, let's say they haven't really ever thought about the issue, or they have thought about the issue and they're certainly not in the pro-life camp. This at least gives them the opportunity to at least begin thinking about what it means to be pro-life. It's a positive thing here. Choose life, right? Choose life. What does this mean? Choose life, right? And so that little seed is planted at that very moment. Right? And this can certainly lead to other conversations, certain other discoveries, and so forth down the road. Right? Now, this is sort of an interesting sort of thing, and I argued this particular point. Again, this was roughly 10 years ago. And all throughout this time. Now, the story that I read about just recently, just in the last few days, talked about how this couple was at a, excuse me, they were at a car wash, and they were going through the car wash, and they had these specialty plates, and the woman who was there taking the cash for people to go in and so forth saw the specialty plates, and she was pregnant and she was considering an abortion. She saw the plates, and again, that instant, the choose life, again, that little seed, she started thinking, and bam, something happened, and she basically had them roll around and told them what was happening. And she said, I saw that and it made me change my mind. This is the sort of impact that I'm talking about with respect to these plates. They can have that kind of impact. They can have that kind of change. That plate, that $30, $40 that this couple spent on that particular plate changed that young lady's life. That's massive. We may never hear the stories of, various people driving around, and none of us, any of us, we may never find out, for any of us that have these plates, how many lives have been impacted because someone saw these plates, whether it was in a grocery store parking lot, a hardware store parking lot, or wherever. Be a comic book store parking lot. Doesn't matter. The simple fact of the matter is that someone saw it and it may have changed their mind. That is the kind of impact. Or maybe it got that person thinking, and down the road, they eventually saw the light, if you will, and they began to change their mind. That little seed of thought did something. This is the sort of impact that we're talking about here that leads this person to choose life and to eventually choose the culture of life. That's the kind of impact that these Choose Life specialty plates have. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this edition of Pro-Life University. Again, give us a big thumbs up. We always appreciate it. Hit the subscribe channel. We always appreciate that too. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend, and God bless.